Thoughts on this?
Uh, Again, I think I understand the concept from Shintaro. It looks like we do have the name swap there. Uh, I don't know if the green is specifically going to benefit him in this matchup, unfortunately, which
Hmm.
is not a great start to the day. But it, good mulligan from Shintaro, and I think this hand's certainly looking a decent bit better. Gives him a good curve here. One, two, three, four.
Looks like we're going to get the vision fixed here because at the moment we do have the names and camera swap, which is a an unfortunate little misstep there. We'll get that one fixed up. But Temur Adventures, I guess these decks really, from a certain point of view, have been around for a long time. And coming into this weekend, we talked about the fact that we were going to see updated archetypes, Marnie. We're going to see, old archetypes that had been enlivened and refreshed. And certainly that's the case with Temur Adventures. This is a deck that has a couple of new Kaldheim cards and a couple of new Kaldheim Mythics that are going to make all the difference. And here's one of them now.
Yeah, I think the big gains for this deck, as you mentioned, are those mythics, the
Mm-hmm.
copy of
Mm-hmm.
Alrund's Epiphany, as we are going a little back here, and those the Goldspan Dragon. That's the big hard hitter. We've seen it making an impact on standard in week one. It came out in the Is It Tempo decks.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to see it in this new Naya Adventures combo kill deck that is essentially trying to take advantage of Goldspan's treasure making ability with cards like Unleash Fury and Kazul's Fury, I believe. And just it's a card that continues to make more and more splashes in standard. Now we're seeing it in this
Mm.
Temur taking turns deck. And turns out a 5 mana hasty dragon that makes 2 mana whenever it attacks or when it gets targeted is pretty good.
Well, I mean, that's what I was going to stop you there. You say 5 mana. I mean, it's just not like it's just, there's a certain other 5 mana mythic that only really costs three that comes to mind that dominated a standard format and has gone to see play in Pioneer, Modern, in Historic. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and I think Goldspan Dragon is cut from the same cloth. Maybe not quite as powerful as the Planeswalker, but still an extremely potent card. And something that really makes it all the more difficult to deal with, especially in reactive decks like that, is it Flash deck. We're not going to see it so much in this list that Magni's playing, maybe post-board a little bit, is the fact that, like, you play the dragon. Yeah, cool. All right, go to attacks. Before that, I'll Heartless Act it. Okay, get a treasure, sack the treasure, negate it. Give it protection, whatever. And that just makes it so, and the fact that it has haste and can get in there straight away. This dragon it's really good without being totally soul-crushingly dominant. I like where this card is at. It's an exciting, powerful card that offers a lot of utility and can be used in aggro decks, in mid-range decks, even in this sort of combo-esque finish that we've seen out of these Naya decks here.
Yeah, Riley, I do want to point out already we're seeing some of the awkwardness of the choices in this deck from Shintaro because of the fact that Soaring Thought Thief has the specific blue-black mana cost. If Shintaro doesn't start off turn one with one of those 6 lands in his deck, the 4 Zagoth Triumphs or the 2 Temple of Maladies, he was unable to cast the Heart's Desire part of Lovestruck Beast because he wouldn't be able to curve into that Soaring Thought Thief on 2. So certainly, even in this early part of this round, we are seeing a bit of an awkward interaction from this Sultai Rose deck that Shintaro has brought.
Yeah, and I mean, I came in talking about how we've got the best mana that we've had in standard for a while, and I mean, when I say a while, I mean since the Shocklands left, because that's the difference, right? That's the difference between like Darkball Pathway and Overgrown Tomb. Overgrown Tomb taps for green and black for the rest of the game, whereas Darkball Pathway, you got to make that call, man. You got to make that call, and if you get it wrong, woo boy, you're gonna get punished. So the mana is a little awkward, but it certainly has improved since since the addition of Kaldheim. A great turn here for money, though. Look at this, playing out the Great Henge immediately, getting value from the 2 mana, putting an Alrund's Epiphany on the back burner here, and looks to be in a decent enough spot from here, although we'll need to continue to draw stuff off the top of the library here.
Yeah, if Luca's able to draw something like a 1-drop next turn to 8, especially like Edgewall Innkeeper, to be able to go 1-drop Auron's Epiphany, this game is going to snowball out of control really quickly for Shintaro. He does have access to this Rankle this turn, should he choose to do so, but that's going to get shut down by these birds that are going to come out for back-to-back Epiphanies from Luca, and I'm a little scared for the Sultai Rogues player here.
The worst thing that can happen for Luca here is just whiffing, like just drawing lands or whatever. I mean, the Elrond's Epiphanies are going to be great. Put 4 power on the battlefield and start getting in there. That's fine. But they don't draw cards with a great henge. And if it's just lands off the top, Mystical Dispute isn't too bad here.
Riley, the worst thing that could happen for Luca was Shintaro chose discard with Rankle, and Luca had to discard his second blue source. He's not able to cast either of these anymore.
Oh, of course.
Some amount of time with that Ketria
Wow,
Triumph. A lot of time. Shintaro bought himself some amount of time.
I mean, now there's the Ketria Triumph off the top, so those Epiphanies are live next turn, but that was huge. Yeah, getting rid of that blue pathway in order to prevent the Time Walks from being cast here is massive. So instead, Magni here having to take a bit of a slower approach, although having found that second blue source, those Epiphanies are going to be live pretty soon. But yeah, that was huge, hey?
Yeah, it was definitely big. Unfortunately, because that Triumph comes into play tapped, Luca won't be able to put Obosh in his hand this turn if he wants to keep up this Mystical Dispute. So he's just probably going to pass the turn, try to play it safe, knowing that coming up from the next turn, he's going to have essentially 3 turns in a row as well as developing a board state. But oh my god, Shintaro just continues drawing the perfect card for each spot, now having access to potentially Disdainful Stroke for the first Epiphany, and this could be the tempo swing that Shintaro needs.
Yeah. I mean, we look at Elrond's Epiphany, and 7 mana seems to have landed with Time Walks these days, and there's a good reason for that. It's a very powerful effect. But when you're dealing with a 7 mana card, or this card's cost 8 mana for Luca Magni here, when you're dealing with that for just 2 mana, and you've still got a board, you're still getting in for damage, getting in for what, 6 a turn? Magni could just be stuck with these clunky cards, not able to actually force anything through. Let's see what goes on with this Rankle here. Discard and draw. The hidden mode.
I think Shintaro recognizes that these foretold cards from Luca, more likely than not, they're Epiphanies. Luca plays 4 copies of Auron's Epiphany, 2 copies of Sod coming. So most likely, at least one of them, realistically, a good chance both of them are just Auron's Epiphany. With that recognition, Shintaro wants to just get aggressive, wants to continue fixing and tuning down his hand, and doesn't really care if he's giving Luca more cards, since Luca more or less has everything he needs. Unfortunately, Luca with that 3rd blue source now is able to play Epiphany with Mystical Dispute backup, which is going to be pretty devastating here now for Shintaro, as this could just end the game.
Not falling for the bait of the Lovestruck Beast here. Magni is going to play the Riverglide pathway as a blue source, you would imagine, so as to fire off a Time Walk and still be able to defend it with the counterspell, as you mentioned there, Marnie. And Mystical Dispute, we're seeing it in main decks of many cards. It's still very good. An overpriced mana leak. I've never seen a card look so bad and do so much, but it really has done a lot of work. And here's Elrond's Epiphany now, again with that Mystical Dispute backup from the Ketria Triome. Disdainful Stroke to answer it, but there's the Mystical Dispute, and this is going to be very difficult for Ishimura to come back from here.
Yeah, this is just so tough now because Magni essentially has 3 turns in a row, and at some point this Lovestruck Beast is going to have to chump block Magni's Lovestruck Beast, and then the game is just over regardless.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what sort of Eldritch Pact that Temur players sign. I don't know which of the old gods they called upon here, but they always seem to have a minimum of 3 Time Walks. Like they cast 1 Elrond's Epiphany, like, yeah, okay, all right, take 10, all right, it's probably fine though. And they're like, oh, you got another one? Oh, all right, okay, well maybe now I can start blocking. And then they cast a 3rd. You're like, mate, come on, what are you doing? Where are you keeping these cards?
I think that is an accurate translation of Shintaro's facial expression right now, as you see the chuckle and acceptance of his fate as Luca takes the first game here.
Yeah, and without too much trouble as well. That was a cool play with the Rankle discarding that blue source, but at the end of the day, hardly breaking a sweat there. Luca Magni, the Lord of Ironforge. Getting it done. And now we move to the sideboard. And some interesting options here. That Mystical Dispute will be very important. But do we want to go even bigger? Stuff like Ox of Agonis is useful, and Phoenix of Ash, given that the graveyard's going to be filled out. So talk to me about how the sideboarding is going to look between those two players here, Money.
I do think it's a lot more typical from Luca. This is a matchup that we've seen a decent amount of in past standards. It's not this exact iteration of Rose. It's not this exact iteration of Temur, but it's a matchup we've seen. And yeah, the escape cards are going to be huge. So the Phoenix of Ash, the Ox of Agonis, they're definitely coming in. I think we're going to see that copy of Mystical Dispute that Luca has in the sideboard come in as well. Maybe some of the removal, but typically when you're on the Temur side of the matchup, you can't dilute your game plan too much. You do need to be putting on pressure if you want to make the most use of your time walks. Though it would be interesting if Luca actually considers taking out some Alrund's Epiphanies, just because he is playing against this counterspell oriented rogues deck. So we'll see what kind of decisions he makes, as we don't actually have a look at the player's sideboarding right now. On Shintaro's side, I think these Soul Shatterers are really interesting, because typically the instant speed removal is something you want to be looking at against this Temur Adventures deck. And okay, we're actually seeing what is coming in and out here in each matchup. Yeah. So we'll talk more about it. The Soul Shatterers are coming in.
They are reversed. It's important to note. Shintaro Ishimura is not bringing in souls here.
Yeah, so we do actually see Luca taking out 2 copies of Alrund's Epiphany. I think that's a great call. Just going down a bit in terms of heaviness, but notably not bringing in the Ox of Agonis, only bringing in the 2 copies of Phoenix of Ash, as well as the Dispute and 1 Soul Seer. These Soul Shatters was what I was really focusing on. It's interesting because, yes, you want them to be able to answer this Goldspan Dragon, but this Temur Adventures deck actually protects the dragon, I guess not that well. The only thing they have to protect it is that Obosh, so not a bad answer for this dragon, and maybe the reason Luca is taking out 2 copies.
Decent looking hand here for Magni with the Edgewall Innkeeper and double Lovestruck Beast, and an equally decent looking hand for Shintaro Ishimura here. They just always have Drown in the Loch, man. I don't know how they do it. They just always have Drown in the Loch.
They do, but this is, as far as Drown in the Lochs go, this is not the best Drown.
Actually, you know what? You're right. And the reason I didn't realize that is because I don't treat that as like all the stuff about the cards in the graveyard. That's all nonsense. That card is Doomblade counterspell. Like split card. That's all it is, man. Edgewall Innkeeper and a Heart's Desire here. Or maybe actually going to sandbag the Innkeeper here. Going to go with the Heart's Desire to begin with. This is awkward, man. This is an awkward way to cast these spells.
This is not the right order if you're going to play
get Manatized, dude. You're going to get Manatized.
Luca. Oh, okay. All right.
Recognizing you didn't want to walk face first into a Jwari Disruption here, like that cat in the gif of the bakery. Instead, sends out another 1/1 with the Lovestruck Beast. Wise stuff there from Magni. He was flying close to the sun for a second.
It was really close for Magni to get caught in this trap, but honestly, I don't know how Shintaro wins this game. Looking at this hand from the Sultai Rogues deck, you've got a ton of just 1-for-1 answers, and Luca's on the other side with 4 adventure creatures, a Phoenix of Ash that can just get escaped from the graveyard with using some of the fuel that your opponent puts in there while trying to counter your stuff, and this game's already looking really tough for Shintaro.
I mean, he's losing. He's on 19, the opponent's on 20, right? That's how Magic works.
First blood.
That's it. All right. So, Lovestruck Beast now to follow up the Heart's Desire. No Edgewall Innkeeper. Looking to, I think, save that for a point at which it can get immediate value. But the Jwari Disruption, little mana tide there. Little Force Spike, taking the 5/5
love a good
out
Force
of action.
Spike.
Oh, there's nothing better. There's nothing better, dude. Have you seen that, like, there are, the Bogles? I mean, Bogles in Modern already just, the deck of, I don't know, it's the deck of choice for many fine and upstanding Magic broadcasters, I'll put it that way. Is playing Manatide now. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've actually seen that development kind of coming out more and more in recent years, and
just because just because you weren't getting them enough, just because you weren't, just absolutely ruining your opponent's hopes and dreams enough. Get them with a
People were
get him
having
with a
too
Manatide.
much fun playing against Boggles, and they're just like,
what can we do about it?
You know what they need? They need a counterspell.
We tried main deck Leyline of Sanctity. We tried that, right? That didn't sap enough fun out of the game from the opponents. Fun is zero sum, Manny. If you're having some of it, I'm not having all of it.
True.
Visual Innkeeper's going to resolve here. Bone Crusher Giant still an option as Stomp, but no third land here. And I think this is how Manu loses the game, not finding enough lands to cast his spells here. You're going to see a 1/3 flashed in here. Oh, no, sorry, it's Drown the Lock instead. The card that Money, Professional Magic the Gathering commentator Money, said does nothing. It's just remove the most important creature on the battlefield. Wow, Money, egg on your face, mate.
Yep, I think that is a good summation of what I said. Notably, we are seeing this interaction, essentially, of foretell, which you can foretell anytime during your turn, even though it says during your turn it's not a sorcery speed. So that allowed Luca to pass, and if Shintaro chose to play Brazen Borrower on Luca's end step, Luca would have access to that Stomp. But because Shintaro chose to remove the Innkeeper, Luca no longer needs that 2 mana and just makes sure to foretell that Alrund's Epiphany while he can. Again, you're right, this is definitely the way that Shintaro can win this game, is if Luca doesn't hit those land drops. But right now, there's just not much going on over in Shintaro's hand, and eventually these Lovestruck Beasts, these Bone Crusher Giants are going to land, and those Brazen Borrowers are not representing a clock with these 2 copies of Stomp sitting in Luca's hand at the moment.
That's a great point, and the other really awkward thing about these adventure cards for Ishimura is they don't get hit by Disdainful Stroke, right? Like, there's no clean answer to this 5/5 that can come down this turn, and there's the 4th land as well for Magni, so the Italian is starting to race off down the field, and it's looking worse and worse for old mate Shintaro.
Yeah, double red as well, so now has access to 2 Stomps should he need it, or the ability to play that Phoenix of Ash. So things going pretty well for Luca right now. Hitting that 4th land just means that he's in a really comfortable spot. And for Shintaro, you're right, that Disdainful Stroke not looking great is an answer to that Goldspan Dragon, is an answer to the Great Henge should Luca draw one, but that's just not really what the game is about right now at this moment in the game.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is the problem with a card like Disdainful Stroke. When you've got mana values across the curve, when you've got 3 drops, 5 drops, whatever else, cards like Disdainful Stroke become a little more awkward. And, you know, this is the classic tension between the 2 mana counterspells. Essence Scatter, Disdainful Stroke, Negate. None of them do everything, but they all do one thing very well. Another land at the top as well in the form of Spike Field Hazard here. And that means that the Goldspan Dragon is live next turn, although Money has played pretty conservatively so far, Money. So he may not just jam the Dragon into open mana, you'd think.
Yeah, I don't think Luca is going to jam this Dragon into open mana. I think what we're going to see once Luca has the ability to leave up Stomp is we're going to start seeing this Lovestruck Beast deployed, maybe just put Obosh in hand. Now with access to 3 red as well, Luca could be playing Phoenix of Ash, but certainly playing it quite conservatively here.
Yeah. There's the 6th land, and now the Lovestruck Beast that we were promised. And, I mean, this is going to resolve. If it sticks on the battlefield, that's another matter. You can always get rid of the 1/1 as well, so it just becomes a defender, effectively. A couple of options here for Ishimura, but pressure's starting to mount. He needs to draw lands. He's flooding out pretty badly. He's already drawn, 8?
Yeah, 8 lands already. Only these 2 copies of Brazen Borrower as pressure, quote unquote, since they're not really doing anything in this spot. But I think this is really big recognition from Luca to just keep keeping up these stomps and not really ever give Shintaro a chance to snowball anything. Right now, Shintaro doesn't have anything, but these rogue decks, they have access to something like Thieves Guild Enforcer, to Soaring Thought Thief. So the last thing Luca wants to see is passing the turn back with no Stomp Up, and suddenly Shintaro goes, all right, flash in 2 Thieves Guild Enforcers on your end step, flash in a Brazen Borrower, mill you for 6 cards, and suddenly I have 10 power on the board, right? That's the type of snowball effect that Luca doesn't want to see, which is why I think we're seeing him play this so conservatively.
Makes a lot of sense. You know, you sort of look at this and it's, especially against matchups with, against decks like Rogues, it's difficult to tell who's the beatdown. Because they can turn this corner and all of a sudden just absolutely put your pants down, but then they can sit there behind a wall of counter magic and just wait as well and remove your stuff, counter your stuff, whatever else. So knowing your role in this matchup is really important, and it changes turn to turn. So Magni's doing a masterful job here of making sure he doesn't let himself get bamboozled. Here's Phoenix of Ash. This is one of the key sideboard cards in this matchup. Magni, of course, because of the backup plan that Rogues has with milling, Phoenix of Ash can be a great way to punish that. Keep bringing back a recursive threat from the bin, one that can end the game more or less on its own if both players are flooding out without too much action. So it's the perfect card in a matchup like this.
Yeah, and I think this is when we're going to see Shintaro at least consider deploying these Brazen Borrowers, but still decides to hold off. And yeah, you're right. This is the perfect type of card in this matchup because it demands an answer of your opponent. But if the Rogues deck is doing what it's trying to do, which is win the game through some amount of pressure and control, then you're going to be able to recur this Phoenix of Ash, and they don't have infinite answers to it. So eventually it's going to get across the finish line and get the job done. And even now we're seeing Shintaro essentially just spent an entire turn cycle taking damage from Phoenix of Ash while deploying nothing. So Luca just got free damage in and wasn't punished for it in any way, and it's just happening again. This is a really tough game for Shintaro to win, and Luca absolutely knows it and is every step of the way playing in a way that puts Shintaro in these awkward spots.
And I mean, Ishimura's real mistake here has just been drawing 5 non-land cards, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to play like that, what do you expect, mate? A bit of misfortune here. Bit of misfortune here for our Japanese rival, who hasn't had the best of draws in this matchup, or in this game, I should say. You know, the opening hand was fine. I don't think anyone was faulting the keep. It was a little reactive, but drawing 4 billion lands and, 1 copy of Soul Shatter is not going to get you there. Here's Bone Crusher Giant now, cast Au Natural as a 4/3.
Yeah, I think one thing we have to talk about when you mention that Shintaro has drawn so many lands is the specific build of Rogues is more designed to beat aggressive decks. And one of the biggest costs we've seen in doing so from Shintaro is there's no copies of Into the Story in this Sultai Rogues deck. Normally when you have a Rogues deck like this, it's only a matter of time until they draw their copies of Into the Story, they draw 4 cards, and suddenly all of their problems are gone. They no longer have that awkwardness that they've been facing. Shintaro doesn't have access to that. The best draw spell he has available in his deck is 1 copy of One Mind. That's not going to get the job done, and I think that's part of why this is just so awkward here for Shintaro.
I mean, you feel like a genius, right? When you're playing against mono white, mono red, and you play a turn 3 Lovestruck Beast, and the opponent's just like, all right, well, go, I guess. I won't attack with my 2/3. Thanks, Shintaro. But then, in a matchup like this, where you're sitting on 4,000 lands, and you're just there like, geez, I wish I had a 4-mana draw 4 in my deck, but I don't. I've got a 3-mana 5/5, and that makes all the difference. And look, it's not a mistake. We're not going to sit here and say that Ishimura's made the wrong call by putting these cards in his deck, but it's certainly not the matchup you're hoping for here. A lot of us were anticipating a lot of mono white, a lot of mono red, and if that's the case, then Ishimura's done a great job by putting Lovestruck Beast in the starting 60. But there's no such thing as a free lunch, Money. No such thing as a free lunch. I thought. I mean, my parents they gave me lunch for years and years. I thought I was getting them for free. Woo! Oh no.
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely a cost to every decision, and this is the type of standard format where we see people rewarded for these types of decisions, and just as much we see people punished for them. You make a metagame call expecting on any certain weekend some percentage of decks to show up, and if you get it wrong, you're going to get punished for it. And I'm not saying Shintaro got it wrong. There's a decent amount of aggro in the field, but especially round 1 of the tournament, this is not the matchup you want to see with this build of Sultai Rogues, and Shintaro, at least for this round, got it wrong.
So Soul Shatter here. There is the clean answer in Saw It Coming in the foretell zone here for Magni. And it looks like he's going to fire it off as well, although this Goldspan Dragon won't connect, given there is Heartless Act in Ishimura's hand. Didn't opt to go for the Disdainful Stroke, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I think just saving that disdainful stroke for what he's assuming is a copy of Auron's Epiphany. Again, yes, there's 2 copies of Sod coming in Luca's deck, but more often than not, if you see a card foretold from your opponent, you should be assuming that it's Auron's Epiphany in this matchup.
It's literally twice as likely, yes. So in comes the Bone Crusher Giant across for 4, Lonely Brazen Borrower here, and now Magni no cards in hand, but a Bone Crusher Giant off on an adventure, Auron's Epiphany on the back burner, and now it's back to Ishimura, who draws a Force Spike. Not great.
Yeah, we saw Luca doing some math at the end of that turn about whether to play that Ketria Triome or not. Obviously, it's a little weird considering there's already 7 mana sitting on his side of the board and a treasure, but when he was doing the calculations about where his mana costs lined up, it decided that it has more uses for that mana, and I think the big nod is Mystical Dispute, as now you actually see him play a land to play around Mystical Dispute and Jawari Disruption, does have 4 mana to pay if those were the 2 cards in Shintaro's hand. Fortunately, Riser has been saving this disable stroke. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if you're going to beat the 2 4-power creatures, as I'm sure Luca will opt to play Bone Crusher Giant. No? Okay.
Phoenix Savash coming back from Beyond the Grave. Ooh, instead.
This doesn't seem correct. You can only escape that once. If Shintaro has some kind of Born Ripe, yeah, it's a lethal attacker, Luca. I would hold on to it for next turn, just in case.
Thieves Good Enforcer off the top here for Shintaro Ishimura, offers the GG, because that's all she wrote today, sports fans. The first winner in our first round of coverage, Luca Magni, who is going to send across a very lethal attack, brings back the Phoenix of Ash just for good measure, and the Italian rival takes it out. In very convincing circumstances, Marty, Luca Magni's deck certainly behaved itself.